Whereas if Tom hits a queen on that board, it's almost always going to be the best hand.
A lot of stuff to think about.
Yeah.
And this sort of an indication that Tom is calling every 3-bet. 3-6 offsuit?
Wow. Yeah, I mean...
You're folding this a lot of times.
I would say so, yeah. Don't get dealt a hand worse than 3-6 off very often, so I think it's safe to say he's literally never folding to a 3-bet.
You like the Jack-5 suited?
Yeah, I can get behind Jack-5 suited. But 6-3 off, that's a pretty ambitious call.
17,000. Pass.
And a really
10,000 more.
interesting check fold there by Sammy.
Yeah.
That's 10,000 more.
I mean,
I wonder.
weird almost.
Yeah, it's... I mean, there's a flush draw, but it's a pretty dry flop. The King, 6, not that many hands connect.
I'll give it to you. I don't mind. You know, I was looking at this Durrrr challenge thing on the felt. I wouldn't mind having my name there.
Gotta wonder if Sammy's a little gun-shy after that Queen-Jack hand. It was so frustrating for him getting into that situation, facing a big bet.
What do you think?
Gotta wonder if maybe he saw the same sort of thing coming there and didn't want to call the flop for fear of facing another big bet on the turn.
Sort of the idea, you should be thinking ahead, but you don't want to be thinking too far ahead. You still have to sometimes...
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a plan, but you don't want to just be seeing monsters under the bed and refusing to call one street because you're certain you're going to get bluffed out on the next.
The any-two tool would be fantastic, I think, personally.
And it is a straight draw, but only one end is open
Go out
here.
the UK,
Yeah.
playing heads up, you know?
You should work it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to speak to Ed.
Okay.
I feel like sometimes guys would check here if they're Durrrr to get paid off on the river, or...
Yeah, it's a consideration, but it's such a coordinated board, and Sammy's so likely to have a pair with a queen or a pair with a 9 and be willing to call a bet there that I think it's good for Tom to bet.
Blank on the river.
And I think he can probably bet again for value here, though it feels a little thin. It feels like he's not going to get called by worse all that often, but at the same time, Sammy's really, really not going to have better all that often at all. If Tom had something like Ace-9 here, then betting would be a really exciting prospect. It seems like a great spot to bluff. But with Ace-King, I think it's a bet, just because when he calls, he's going to win more than half the time, but I don't think he's expecting to be called all that often.
The yawn from Sammy. He
seems to be seriously considering the possibility of calling here.
No. Your mind plays funny tricks on you sometimes, doesn't it, when your head's up? Long match.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like one of Sammy's friends are in the audience here, this is his home turf.
Especially for the Durrrr challenge.
A lot of people coming in, rooting Sammy on.
Tour.
Oh yeah, we bought a horse.
Really?
It's called Sammy Any2. Yeah, want to see a picture?
So it's a year. So it means it's about 1.5 years old. It'll be 2 kind of. They all go 2 on the 1st of January. So it's with a trainer called David Ellsworth, who's one of the best.
Yeah, that's it.
trainers
Take a look.
in the UK.
Is it a good horse?
Well, it's a young horse, so we don't know yet, but it's well bred. It's by a Group 1 winner.
We certainly hope it runs faster than Sammy.
How much did you buy it for?
£50,000, or actually 51,000 guineas. And Sammy will tell you how much pounds that is, because I got to go play. See you there.
51,000 guineas. How much 51,000 guineas?
I guess that means £50,000.
Something maybe.
Tom came here to play poker. He's going to end up buying a horse.
Yeah.
How much?
I don't know. 10% or something?
Done.
How much do you have? You have.
I have the. How much do I have of the horse? Huh? How much do I own of the horse? 70%.
Oh, who else has pieces?
Do you want to go house with me?
No, I mean not to take like 5% or something. I don't want to take all your
Take 10.
pieces.
You
Give him 10%.
take
No,
10.
I have 17.
I have
You have
70.
10%?
I have 70%.
Oh, 70.
70.
I thought you said 17.
70.
Oh.
Raise 2,000 total.
10% is yours.
Yeah, okay.
Or do you want more?
No, 10% is fine, that's fine.
No, please take more.
Oh, it's a bit worse.
I haven't won yet.
Have you ever been offered to buy things at the poker table, Isaac?
We
I
could
mean,
end up selling
get
it for
all kinds of
For like
kinds of
5,000
business
or
deals,
for
don't
5
you?
million.
Oh
For
yeah.
God knows, you know what I mean?
If you ever
Crazy.
play with Alan Kessler, he's likely to try to sell you JCPenney store credit or
It could be for...
Range Rover. Or
Give me 20% then. Because you owe me 10,000 pounds from the game the other day.
Yeah.
I think one time he was walking around a WPT with a bag full of headphones.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay.
Because someone else paid
Yeah,
you
Nick Gold,
5,000.
Nick Gold, Nick Gold. Nicky G.
So you owe me 10,000, so we
Yes,
watch
do you want... So, okay, because we're putting all the people's names who own them. We're putting all the people's names who own the horse on the share certificate with the horse.
Yeah.
So you're legally... He's got legal rights. So you've got, like, legal rights to Sammy.
3,000.
Huh?
3,000.
3,000
three?
is the bet.
I don't think Tom is thinking this is going to be his ticket out of here. The horse
Make
that
sure
wins the
Craig
Kentucky
said you had
Derby. Or
70%, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
thought
don't
you said
think so.
17. That's why I'd feel bad.
No, I've got.
5,000.
I have.
it's just
It's pretty cool.
Raise to 18,000.
I just did it to see how quick he would react with the camera. See how quick she shifted. Right.
I haven't seen Tom
Did you guys
do
think
too much
is
of
it
that.
Like a
No.
Raising the flop.
No,
In
it's,
fact,
I think, the guy, like John's doing everything, you know.
If John thinks it's a decent investment, then I'm sure it is.
That's why I went into it.
Oh, you went in as an investment, not for fun?
Obviously for fun,
Oh, okay.
you know.
But like not thinking you're losing too much. That's all I want. I'm fine losing half of it. I just want some expected chance of return.
I'd be silly, man.
I mean, obviously you're always going to lose all of it or not. But
Well, I don't know where the hell he's running.
Raise
I mean, there's like a
3,000.
chance it ends up really good, even though it's super unlikely
Oh.
chance, right?
Yeah, it could. I mean, it could be like that. It could be like that Chinese guy's horse,
Is that,
who bought the horse for. Who bought the
5,000.
horse for. The one that's like it's like one of the best horses around or something. I'm not too good with horses, but they won them. He was the only horse in the left that no one bought. He was overlooked by the top boys,
oh,
and he's won everything. He's worth like hundreds of millions of pounds.
Really?
Yeah, it's sick. It's a story and a half, that one. John will tell you. I'm not too like great or whatever when it comes to horses, but like John said, it's cool. So and it's a little fun. So why not?
yeah, I just want to slight sweat.
You know,
That's all that matters.
it is
I mean,
one
it's
of the
fun if you
things
want.
that
Right, we can
happens
go down and watch it
to
and
all
stuff.
high-stakes
And
players.
we
You're
still do
playing
the
for
same
such
comics,
huge
so we
sums
don't
of
have it
money
over.
that it just
No, I
flies
like-
around. It's hard to value
No, I like
anything.
everything
Yeah,
Surprise.
something
I wanna
comes
just show
up
up
like,
and see
you
it
know,
run.
buying a
get
share
to
of a
laugh and
horse for
everything.
5 big blinds, and why not?
Raise 3,000 total.
Just wonder, why did Sammy get the naming rights? I mean,
Do you know when the first race it's going to have is?
It's next year. John knows. That 7 tree. I check.
what's the most frivolous thing you've ever bought with your big poker wins? Or
This would be better.
you don't seem to be the kind of guy who puts out 30,000 pounds on a watch. Or
No, not so much. I've bought some pretty expensive meals in
Did
my
you
day.
play high stakes poker? Not all poker after dark cash
I
game.
don't think so. He played poker off the card. I don't think he played house stakes poker.
He played the poker after dark cash game.
Yeah.
I check.
this has been check, 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 check.
See,
2,000.
can't even call 2,000 with your house.
Welcome back. Full Tilt Poker Durrrr $1 Million Challenge. Myself and Isaac Haxton looking on. This $1 Million Challenge sort of grew out of the online Durrrr challenge.
Raise.
Right.
That's still going on.
3,000.
Yeah.
I mean, how do the big players
every time.
Yeah,
react to this challenge by Dwan?
Obviously, several of them were very excited about it. Antonius, Benjamin, and Ivy all accepted the challenge within a week of its being issued, and there were a lot more people who were potentially interested, but since there were already 3 takers lined up, didn't really get around to deciding whether or not they wanted to.
6 times against me yesterday. He raised 3 and then 6-7. Flop king 7, king 6.
And a guy like Sammy, I mean, although he's not being laid odds in this challenge, you can see it is the kind of thing that it excites people because it's a chance to challenge yourself.
And the king and the flush draw.
Absolutely.
Oh. So you had full house? Right?
Raise.
Yeah.
3,000 total. Well,
How'd you do yesterday?
I don't know, I left early.
As far as 500 hands go, which is what they're going to play in this
Yeah.
one, it is a small sample size.
It really is. It's not a very long session at all.
Yeah, it's been like, he hasn't had a break, has he?
People frequently
such a
play
lovely guy.
4 or 5 times that many hands in a sitting
Yeah, I
online.
like him a lot.
check.
Yeah, he's...
Roland's impression of him was so awesome.
Who, Marcello?
Yeah,
Check.
Jack.
Yeah. Marcello's impression of him.
No, Roland's impression
yeah,
of Marcello, yeah.
You should see Roland's impression
Of who?
of, what's his name, the Dutch guy, Marcel Lusk.
Oh, it's on
Yeah, that online challenge, I think 50,000 hands,
Yeah.
isn't it? So, basically 100 of these one-day sessions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a daunting amount for sure.
Check.
There was some discussion online after the challenge was issued if that would be the most hands anybody had ever played, any 2 players had ever played heads up against each other, and the consensus was that it probably would be. I know personally I've never played more than about 20,000 hands heads up with an individual opponent, and
Wasn't nice.
that over the course of many months.
And at the end of those 20,000 hands, you kind of felt like the run of luck had been exhausted. And so, I mean, it was a pretty true reflection of the results were a true reflection of the skill.
Well, honestly, in the 20,000 hand session I'm thinking of, or not session, but 20,000 hands I'm thinking of, I won about 2/3 of the total amount I was up by the end in the last session. So, even over a gigantic sample like that, 1,000 hands, 1,500 hands can really swing things.
And it is sort of one of the things we're learning more and more about poker, isn't it? You never really know when the long run starts and ends.
No, I mean, as the years go by, there just seem to be more and more examples to convince you that the long run is a very long time.
It's probably what Sammy's telling himself right now.
Yep.
This is the 3-bet and continuation from Tom.
Yep, we've seen a lot of that from him. Though, in the very recent history, he has been checking more.
Sammy's counting on a raise. Now,
Raised to 42 pounds.
and Tom's got nothing, was just not even going to contest it. But if Sammy had an ace here, would he have been more likely to call, in your mind? I mean,
I don't know. Something like ace-10, almost certainly. If he had 2 pair or a set, he could very probably raise. If he had even something like ace-king or ace-queen, I think raising could make a lot of sense.